What is up, my dashing dudes? I am the Hans TV, and welcome back to the only place where you can find the biggest pool of idiocy. It's r/StoriesAboutKevin. Our first post for the day comes from Fyron. I knew a Kevin once. This guy I went to high school with was a Kevin. He constantly got in trouble in middle school because he wouldn't shower or use deodorant because he didn't think he needed it. In high school, he failed at least 5 classes and missed graduation ceremony because he had to retake a class during the summer. After high school, he tried to get into the Marines, but couldn't because he couldn't keep track of and organize his own medical documents. He failed to keep a job more than 3 months and went through at least 20 of them while I knew him because he would just sometimes refuse to show up depending upon how he felt. He drove so poorly and with such disregard that he rear-ended my car at least 5 times. All of these times being when it was parked in his driveway because he wouldn't look behind him while reversing. He once almost sent us into a ditch while trying to drift too. Money-wise, he couldn't keep $1 to his name. Every time a paycheck came in, it went into 3 things. Food at his favorite restaurant, the most expensive sushi restaurant where we live, by the way, which he ate almost bi-weekly, new gaming technology, despite not having a computer or gaming system to play the games on, and gas. The last one isn't that bad, except for his inability to drive and his speed demon nature. He was always trying to hit 200 miles per hour on long highway stretches. There's also the fact that he wound up losing pretty much every friend he had because one of his favorite things to do was call people the most provocative thing he could think of in public situations. He started calling me a pedophile anytime we were out in public. He legitimately thought it was a harmless joke and even an endearing nickname. Needless to say, I don't talk to or associate with him anymore. Okay, so going that fast down the highway and his inability to pay attention to the road, I think that's just natural selection saying, hey, this guy's time is up. Let's do this. Our next post comes from Nakomi Faro. When you're Kevin and have no choice. I worked many years in a bank, initially as a cashier, then I went through all the positions until I became a kind of coach for the new staff. Once I was working in a newly opened office. New staff, except the manager and me. This meant that I was running all day from one position to another, trying to avoid disasters. The office was in a small town with very rich people, so part of the employees were daddy's children who had placed them. Some were good employees, but there was one that was a prize. Divorced parents and raised by his father, was entitled, rude, and foolier than a stone. I'll call him Kevin. Everyone knew each other, so it was very common for some clients to come asking us to give them information about accounts that were not theirs, from their children, husbands, etc., or ladies trying to get money from their husband's account with the excuse of, I am the wife. This attitude is a no in a bank, so I constantly repeated to the new staff to ask for identification and verify the signatures. Every day I had some discussion with a lady, although her husbands called me later to thank me. Lol. One day, I began to hear screaming in the box. I approached and realized that Kevin was yelling at a lady, while the lady said very quietly she wanted to talk to the manager. The rest of the employees were trying to calm Kevin. When Kevin saw me, he shouted, Miss Nocamfaro! This lady was trying to get money from her husband's account, but I got her. I asked her for ID and she gave me your husband's. At that moment, I looked at the lady, then at Kevin, and asked, Has she signed in your presence, and have you checked the signature with the identification? Yes, of course. Does the signature match the one on the ID? Looking at both signatures, yes, it coincides. It's a very good fake. It matches because it's the same. It's not a fake. But it's impossible. I know the ID man. He's my neighbor. He's my mother's friend. He's not married. Now go back to your table and pay her. Apologize and try not to shout anymore. In a town of nearly 2,500 inhabitants, Kevin managed to shame his neighbor who is trans. The one he knew from a lifetime. He was fired a couple of weeks later for a crazier story. I met his mother years later, and she told me that Kevin was working with her cousin in an egg farm, and he was doing well, since he only had to talk with the chickens. So, like, in a town of like 2,500 people, everyone knows everybody. So it's pretty ridiculous that this guy didn't know that this was his transitioning friend, who he'd lived to for his whole life. That's kind of ridiculous. This next post comes from Kraz D. Tao. I worked with a Kevin for 15 long years. The suffrage. I worked in a small company who didn't have IT per se, so I was the first line of defense. This Kevin knew nothing about computers and seriously hated them. Every time he had a problem, I'd happily try to assist while he'd happily hover over me like an FBI helicopter, asking me, "What's wrong? Why did it happen?" and a list of shoot myself now questions. Often, when I suggested the turn it off and back on again method, this really fired him up. It was so aggravating. Nice word. To try to help someone who complained, was completely ungrateful, and acted as if I was putting him out. One day, I decided to mess with him a bit. When he was in the bathroom, I did a replace with for the documents he typed up. So every time he typed the, it automatically changed it to F. I waited patiently as to how long this would take to realize, which was a day and a half of documents being sent out saying this. Finally, Mr. Extraordinarily Large Testicles comes to me for help. I say, "You got yourself in quite a predicament there now, don't you?" Boss gets involved, just as bright. And I finally say, "Well, I looked into it, and I'll have to uninstall and reinstall all Microsoft Office products, and it's probably going to take the better part of the night, so I'll do it, but only if I don't have to come in tomorrow, after such a long night. Please, we'll do anything if you get this fixed." I guess I'll do it for the team. After closing time, I took 2 minutes, changed it back, left, and had a beautiful next day eating bonbons and wondering how people tie their shoes. Don't bite the hand that feeds/helps you, Kevin. Man, this turned into like a revenge story really, really quickly. Like, I get it's annoying working with Kevins, but to completely destroy their work life, that's petty right there. Our final post comes from Laser Moon Centaur. I fired Kevin after one day of amazing stupidity. This guy is probably one of the stupidest people I've ever met. He was a 26-year-old male and turned up an hour and a half late the first day. He was brought in by his mom, which I thought was kind of odd for a grown man, but I let that slide. But then things just got worse. It was a small roadside cafe/eatery, so I thought I'd get him started on small duties to ease him into the way of the place. I asked him to put new toilet paper in the toilets. A minute or so later, I hear him yelling, "Oh, it won't fit on the toilet roll holder." I'm like, "What? That's a pretty simple thing." He calls out again, so I tell him to bring it to me so I can show him. He's carrying a roll of paper towels. It's almost 3 times the length of the TP holder. "Kevin, that is paper towel." "No, it's not." "Yes, it is. Have you ever seen toilet paper that big in your life?" No." "Right. Furthermore, and probably more perplexing, can you not see that this massive roll couldn't possibly fit on this small bar?" "Yeah, I thought that was odd." Oh boy. Well, the day goes on, and after the kitchen is pretty much closed, except for pre-cooked baked goods, I get to give him a general clean, and ask to make sure he wipes down all the benches. I leave him to it, so I assume he's doing fine. And I was wrong. One of the other staff comes and says we've run out of toilet paper, and I'm like, "What? That's not possible." Sure enough, all the packs are torn open and empty, except for the rolls on the holders. At this stage, I realize there can only be one culprit, and call Kevin over. "Did you do something with the toilet paper?" "What is with this guy and toilet paper?" "Yes, I used it to wipe down the benches in the kitchen." "You used 8 rolls of toilet paper to wipe down the benches in the kitchen? Why are you using the toilet paper to wipe down the benches?" "I don't like using the dishcloth." "Who taught you to wipe down benches with toilet paper? Have you ever seen anyone wipe down benches with toilet paper?" "The cloth was dirty, and I didn't want to clean it out." By this stage, I'm thinking, day's nearly over, just let it go, and I'm sure it'll work out fine. Yeah, you know what's coming. Kevin strikes again, and this time, it's beyond moronic. So I've got him on serving customers pastries, and the like, because all you have to do is take it out of the glass bay, put it on a plate, and give it to them. He doesn't even have to ring it up. Just pop on plate and give. Well, one of the customers orders 3 scones with jam and cream. He's behind the counter doing his thing, and I have a little peek of and see. Yes, he's cut them in half and managed to put jam and cream on them. About a minute later, the customer brings the scones back up to the counter. There's something really hard in these scones. I bit down and it was crunching like on a rock or something. Of course I'm puzzled. Oh, I'm really sorry about that. When Kevin cuts in, it's probably just the seeds in the jam. Now there's something about the way he says this that makes my alarm bells ring. Show me what you put on those scones. And I start marching towards the prep bench. Sitting on the bench is a bowl of whipped cream, and next to it, in a plastic bag, is a broken glass jar which contains the jam. This idiot is feeding the customer broken glass. I didn't think it would be a big deal. Are you freaking insane? I grabbed the plate of mostly uneaten glass-infused scones. How is anyone supposed to eat this? To my utter amazement, he proceeds to eat them in front of me, all while crunching on glass and flinching every time he does. I'm paralyzed, dumbfounded. When he finishes eating them, he says, "Do you think I should go to the hospital?" You're fired. Well, at least he was committed to showing that people can eat them. I mean, he took it in stride and he was like, yeah, I'm going to the hospital now. Nah, fam, you're fired. Well, with that being said, that's going to do it for today's episode of r/Stories About Kevin. I hope you enjoyed the idiocy today, and I hope that you enjoy many more to come. With that being said, I will see you in the next video.